Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Atlantic Bushcraft Adventures. Tonight, episode 334. And as we promised last week's episode, we're kind of continuing on with our theme there. And this week, we're talking about off-road vehicles, and we're going to kind of touch on a few points about them. So I guess my thoughts on this, and this is what we were talking about and why we're coming in a couple of minutes late, was my take on this is I want to talk about some of the stuff that you should have in your vehicle in a couple different ways. Like just in every vehicle, if you're going to do some basic camping or maybe some woods roading stuff, and maybe if you're going to go a little bit more extreme and beat down, some old trails and stuff like that and talk about that. I think you might have had a little different view on it as well, Ben. So what's your plan going into this to talk about as well?
Well, I think originally my thought might have been sticking a little bit more around what to look for when picking out a vehicle, and then we're kind of looking at also what to do before you leave to prepare a vehicle. So both of these things, I think, have their place in this overall, but it's just something to think about. To talk, it's a talking point, really.
Yep, and that's kind of where I was general discussion. Once again, I don't pretend to be an expert. I know when I do off-roading, I do things my own way, and I will mention some of the things I do, but I have buddies that do it different ways and it works for them. You know what I mean? As always, my insight is just to try to get people thinking about what they may want to do or to throw some ideas at us. But I do like that you want to talk about where to start at looking at a vehicle. Might as well start at the very beginning and work to the end, as most good stories tend to progress. And where better to start than getting the vehicle? And I guess for the purpose of this, are we talking like any kind of vehicle to go off-roading? Are we limiting it to cars, trucks, motorcycles, ATVs?
Well, I think any kind of vehicle would work for this conversation, because if you think about it a little bit, before you leave for a trip, you have to really think about what you're doing. Or before you buy a vehicle for this, also you have to kind of think about what are you doing, because you're heading out. So, what was the old one when you're talking about cameras? What's the best camera to take when you're doing X? And someone said, well, it's the camera you have, right? And this is very much true too. What's the best vehicle for off-roading? It's probably the vehicle you have, because any other vehicle, you can't take a vehicle you don't have. It's kind of the thought in here. So that being said, if you're going to choose a vehicle, you should take some time to make sure you're choosing the right vehicle.
And I mean, I'm going to reference an episode we did a while ago back when you were looking at a new vehicle, and when you were looking at buying Scout, and we did talk a little bit about this and some of the things you were looking for specifically there. So to reference that, if anybody wants to check it out, I'll try and throw the number of that episode in the comments when I find it. But basically, you were weighing the pros cons of things that you wanted to do with that vehicle. So, makes sense for the average person, me included, to start there. What are you looking to do with it? Are you looking to just run down the pavement, hit campgrounds, and go to parking spots? Because that's a perfectly acceptable use, and maybe you want to go get your groceries and it's going to be your all-around vehicle. Good place to start. Maybe you have an all-around vehicle and you're looking for a secondary, what we would call a beater, quote-unquote, that you're looking to just, it's mainly going to be for your exploring, adventuring, going through the woods. You're probably going to treat it like a work vehicle. It's going to be a little bit more rough. Or maybe you're looking at a motorcycle or an ATV because you want to get, further out there again, or just a different way of getting out there. And I guess there's no real good way to know what works for you until you try it a little bit. Like, you can plan on it all you want. But past experience, for me at least, was sometimes I've gotten things expecting one outcome, and it's been completely different from what I imagined. And I can't think of a good way to get around that, Ben, other than to go for it. Because even with an ATV, I could borrow a friend's ATV and love that ATV, but unless I buy that exact ATV, you may not get the same thing. You may miss things. And I'm speaking from experience here. Like electronic power steering assist. That is something I realized I want in an ATV going forward. My current one does not have it. The one that I borrowed from my friend to go try to see if I wanted an ATV did. And I have been left wanting it ever since I bought this one.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's definitely options, parts, things you want. That's it's good to consider that because how to put this, it does make a difference. Certain things do. Like for me, I'd really look at the terrain I'm going to go through and think about, what do I want? And I constantly debate. Like I am thinking about, yeah, probably always thinking a little bit. What's my next vehicle going to be, and what do I want? And some things that are kind of a given. Um, let's throw this out there. Is definitely things like your clearance, your ground clearance is really important, right?
No, 100%. I mean, if you, just for instance, we're going to throw a ridiculous thing out there. If you buy yourself a Honda Civic that's been lowered so it's basically scraping leaves as it goes down the road, probably not make it far up a woods road.
Yeah. So ground clearance is one thing. Suspension travel is another thing. I mean, if you're doing big bumps and you have no real travel, like you can have all the clearance in the world, it's going to be as rough as hell. So you're looking for that. What has the suspension to handle what you're going to do? Do you have, it's no point in going in a lot of tough, rough mud and stuff with a car that is very limited to a two-wheel drive, no locking rear differential. You know, you're more likely to get stuck with a system like that.
100%.
And
And a good thing here, and this is where people can dive down rabbit holes because I know you have and I have, is compare a few different vehicles. Don't marry one specific vehicle because you're brand faithful or something like that. I mean, there's a place for that, don't get me wrong, but open your mind ever so slightly. And it might be, like compromising on things. Maybe you want ground clearance of 16 inches, but realistically, you can afford ground clearance of 8 inches. You know what I mean?
yeah, I mean, it's good to know what different vehicles have, what they're capable of, and then think about that. But so there's that side of it, but there's also the other side. What am I planning on doing when I get out there? Because you can have exactly what you just talked about, all the ground clearance in the world. But if the vehicle doesn't have the room to carry what you want, so, you got a family of five, you can't go get a four-seater. It's just not a thing. You can't get a two-seater car. It's not going to work out for you, right?
No, absolutely. Just reading some comments over here. Want to say hi to Eric and Steve. Steve's looking to get a Honda 125 CT Trail. I've actually seen a couple of those float around. They look like a fun little bike. The CRF 150 is another fun little, that's solely dirt, but another fun little bike if you happen to find one at low price.
It's funny. Somebody came to me, I think today, and said, "What size bike do I need?" And then I think the word he said was, "Is a 250 slow?" And, and I said, you know,
Compared to what? A bullet? Yeah. Snail? No.
uh, 250 doesn't necessarily mean fast or slow. It really doesn't. I said, like, what you have to realize is you're dealing with something really neat here. Is it's all in how it's geared. You're probably never going to get a 250 that's extremely fast, like has a high top speed and a high acceleration. That's
And that's coming
probably not
back to the
happening.
compromising thing.
Yeah. But I have done 160 kilometers an hour on a 250.
I believe it.
No problems. In fact, terrifyingly easily. So I will never look at somebody and they'll say, "Oh, yeah, I could never have a 250. They're slow as hell." I mean, I've gone fast enough to kill myself on the 250.
Absolutely. Most 250s will do 110 kilometers an hour, and there's not many places in Canada where you can do more than 110 kilometers an hour anyway. Uh, just reading comments over here. So,
So
sorry. Yeah, so we talked a little bit about looking for what you want to do with it. Now, what's anything else you want to touch on there, Ben, before we move along? We are at about the 10-minute mark.
uh, no, let's just quickly summarize that. So first off, look at what vehicle, like before you choose your vehicle originally. kind of really think about what are the stuff you want to do, where do you want to go, and then make sure you're choosing a vehicle that can do it. There are some pretty standard ones out there, like a decent off-road truck. If it says off-road on it, probably is capable of going 80 to 90% of the places anyone is ever going to want to go. Some of the better SUVs, research I've done, like people are really touting the Toyotas. Um, I've had really good luck with the Subarus. But there's some other vehicles, but just because it's an SUV or just because it's a truck doesn't mean it's a good choice. You can look at a few other ones out there and you realize the clearance isn't really there. They're designed for city use. So make sure that the vehicle you want is good for what you're doing. Also, be realistic.
Yeah.
And this is a really important thing. You can, like, I would love to have like a Ford Ranger Raptor or a Colorado Bison. Like there's some ones out there that I really like to have, or a heavily souped up Toyota Tacoma off-road. Like trucks are what I'm looking at right now. The question is, do I need all of that? Because it's really going to suck in the city. Like if you put it up on 35s and your mileage is going to really suck. Your highway travel is probably going to be less than comfortable, probably not stellar. But your off-road is going to be awesome. But if you're doing 80% of your driving on highway, you might regret that.
Not only that, if the one I was thinking of was like, I'd love a Ford Ranger Raptor too. No place to use it. I wouldn't buy a rock crawler to go around Nova Scotia. You know what I mean? One, we don't have the terrain, and like, if you're not going to use it, why pay for it? Maybe you have the money and you want the bragging rights, but to each their own. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying don't get hung up on it. And prime example here, and Ben was hinting to it, was I always wanted a Ford Ranger Raptor, and I was going to gear it off as an off-road vehicle. But why would I dump that much money into something that I would never use that potential to? Yeah, it'd be nice to have just in case, but that just in case is like a 0.01% chance of ever happening. Frankly, what I have works perfectly fine.
Yeah, I mean, and very much so. Like that is a really truth statement. Like most people don't need what the top of the line truck.
And a lot of that fancy stuff, when it breaks, really screws up. And I mean, everything's fancy now comparative to what I had in like the late 90s, early 2000s. My first cars that were carbureted still had the old window winders on it, AM radios. You could fix that stuff literally with a rubber band, a nail, and like a roll of duct tape. Now a sensor goes, car may turn off. Like, I know I had my Ranger this winter. It got so cold, a little bit of frost built up in the turbo, it put my truck in limp mode. Literally, in the middle of an intersection, shut her down. Couldn't do more than 5 kilometers an hour. All over, like, just a little sensor. Wasn't broke. It was just really cold. But yeah, don't get more than you need, especially if budget's an option. The other option on that is, are they things that you might be able to do yourself later? Like, a lot of people are like, oh, I need so much lift, or I need so much clearance. A lot of vehicles, as long as you're looking at a reasonable amount of lift and stuff like that, you can buy lift kits and stuff that you can put in fairly easy at home, and you don't have to mess with the stock suspension or the like the dry shaft angles and stuff like that. Now, if you're talking crazy lifts, do your research. You know what I mean? There's a lot of places. I know Canada was notorious for this once upon a time. Depending on who puts your lift kit in, that vehicle may no longer be legal for the road unless it's recertified by a technician. And Ben can probably remember this here in Nova Scotia. When I say a few years ago, it could be 10 years ago now. Do you remember when they brought that in? Anything that had a lift kit in it was no longer legal for the road until it got inspected, and they had to bring it to that one inspector a province over that charged $12,000 a vehicle to get them inspected.
So, and I remember the big thing with that whole thing was they wanted them to be engineered, and the problem was people were sticking cutting boards and hockey pucks and anything they could think of to gain an extra couple of inches. They were, going to shady car garage and getting a few things welded up and stick under the truck. And the insurance companies were complaining because these things were causing accidents. I assume the insurance companies. I don't know.
Somebody was complaining because, funny enough, the suspension was all messed up on them, so they didn't handle right.
So, I mean, one of the things when I've been looking at all this stuff, I've actually been thinking about is I would really like something that, I'm tempted to get a lot of this stuff stock, like because you can buy uh, good trucks that are already pre-done up the way you would want them to,
Yep.
but you're going
And
to pay a little bit more for that. But I don't know, long term, maybe it's cheaper, right? Like,
I'm going to take my Ranger because that's all I have for experience for this moment. I know I got the FX4 Off Road Edition. I was looking at a Raptor, couldn't afford the Raptor. Same as I was looking at a Lariat, couldn't get the Lariat, which is like the high end fancy model. So I went with an FX4. Figured a lot of those high end fancy things I didn't really need. They were nice wants, but didn't need. I really regret not getting the heated mirrors. That's the only thing I would have changed. That came with the Lariat, did not come with the FX4 at the time. Now it's a whole other package. The other thing was back when I got my truck in 2019, what was called the basic package for the FX4 is now like 5 add-on packages for the basic model now. So that's also kind of going. But look for the things that really matter to you. So for me, I was looking at clearance, and the higher Lariat Raptor came with larger tires. But the reality is, the FX4, all you have to do is put a leveling kit on the front. You can buy a bolt-on system that replaces a bar at the front that a tire would get in the way off. It's literally on bolt the new ones in. Now you can put the same tires on or larger tires because you have even more room.
yeah,
Excuse me. And that bolt-on part, I think, still like $290. Yeah, expensive, but the upgrade to the Raptor was like another $25,000. So perspective, right?
yeah, for sure. I mean, I was looking at the Colorado. Honestly, I'm a little tempted with Colorado. I've owned a Colorado before. I think you probably remember that.
Yeah.
And I love my Colorado. If you buy the Bison version, you get 35-inch wheels, which is pretty good. You have decent suspension, and you have this multi suspension system uh, that you don't get on the original one. Those upgrades would cost you something, but I haven't done the math to say what if I bought a Trail Boss and tried to upgrade it to, or just a regular SR2 or a ZR2, and ZR2, and tried to make that change. So those are some things. But think about the vehicle. Think about your overall use. When I bought the Subaru, some people kind of did make some comments about that, but the reality was it made a lot of sense for me, knowing that my average drive is going to be on the highway. Even when I go off road, I rarely do as much time off road as I did on road to get to it. You know what I mean? Like, I would love to say it was the other way around. But
But
if
the
that was
reality
really
is that's
the
the
case,
majority of the people. They're going to be on good roads significantly more than they're going to be on bad roads. And that even goes for people that are living on dirt roads.
so unless you happen to live right near an off-roading area and that you can afford to have a second vehicle just for that would be awesome. But otherwise, if you're driving to and from work, if you're going into town for groceries, that's going to be a majority. So make sure that the vehicle you pick out makes sense for your lifestyle overall. That being said, I think we'll talk to the next thing, and we'll go a little over this episode, obviously, is once you get your vehicle, before you go off road, there's still things you need to do. And so this was one I know you had it up there, so I'm going to let you hit a lot of it. But we're going to talk a little bit. What is the pre-trip maintenance that we need to do? Because have the perfect vehicle, if it's not maintained, you're better off having a less than perfect vehicle that's well maintained.
And yeah, this is where a lot of problems tend to crop up. So I got the major things I look for, and I call it the major 5. I look at these on all the vehicles I go out, be it my ATV, my truck, my car. Doesn't matter. If I'm going somewhere where it's like, okay, cell phone reception may be shoddy, here's the things I look at. And this is just a quick list. And this is, say I'm just going up a woods road, because when I used to work with natural resources, I'd go up woods roads, looking for fires, stuff like that. So like the beginning of the week, here's the scrap I checked. I'd always make sure my gas tank straps are good, because sometimes, believe it or not, the gas tank can literally fall straight out of the vehicle. And I've had this happen. Going along the back roads, hit a big bump. The gas tank straps were a little seedy that I never noticed because my vehicle was older. Bang, whole thing came straight down on the ground. Ended up holding it back up in place with a ratchet strap to get me out of the woods. But I mean, that's something I could have prevented before it ever happened. If I didn't have the strap and a buddy with me, there's a good chance that that's where the truck would have stayed until I walked out, got cell phone reception, or at this time, cell phones weren't really that popular, until I walked out, got to an area where somebody could find me, and then came back to get my truck. And where I was going, that could have been like 8 hours. So yeah, check on those. Tie rod ends. Tie rod ends, super simple. You just look underneath, see if there's any play in them. Same kind of deal, depending if you're bouncing down roads, and especially if you have an, like what we call beater vehicles. I think I said that earlier, and I'll stick to that term. What we call a beater vehicle is like your second vehicle that you pretty much treat like garbage because you knew it was cheap and you're just running it into the ground. So those can pop off. Once again, came from experience. Had a tie rod end come off. Managed to stick it back together with some wire ahead in the toolbox. Ball joints, same kind of deal. Those can pop out of the socket, especially if you have the ungreasable kind. Sometimes it'll be like no play, no play, no play, whole bunch of play, and then out of the socket it comes. Wheel bearings, generally you can hear those, or you'll see some play in your wheels or something like that. If you have a few wheel bearing, depending on your vehicle nowadays, like they could fuse into a hub in the race, or if your vehicle's old enough to have spindles, or you upgrade it to like Warren Lock and hubs or something like that and it has spindles, you fuse a race onto a spindle, you're not getting that off. Like, well, you could, but you have to cut it off, and that's not going to happen back in the woods. And the last thing is like the brakes. So basically, all the steering components that would matter, make sure the gas stays in it, you're not leaking oil, and that you can stop the vehicle. Those are kind of the big things I look at. Overall, you want to make sure that the general maintenance of the vehicle is okay. Like any quirks it has, be aware of them. But that's kind of the things I look for. What about you, Ben? Is there anything I missed that you might want to touch on there?
No, fluids, tensions, greasing. Make sure everything is greased. Anything that's loose, that's not loose, tighten up. Obviously, um, yeah. Especially before a big trip. I mean, you really should do all this stuff. Lights, make sure all your lights are checked. Did you hit that one? Um, yeah, I think it's really important to make sure your vehicle is maintained and ready for the trip because it's really easy to miss these things. A lot of people, they're excited for the trip. They're worried about packing. They're worried about absolutely everything. And then they get out there and realize, oh, shit, I didn't. And I mean, I've done this. I did a trip a little while ago. I didn't really check the brakes that well. Never had any trouble with the brakes. Got partway through the trip and realized my rear brakes were virtually non-existent on my bike.
Yep, and that happens quite often. I mean, my Ranger, the rear brakes go on that faster than the front brakes, which is weird because your front brakes have 70% of your stopping power, but they got those threaded pistons, so they never really loosen off the rotors the way they're supposed to. They're weird. Anyway, I went to the factory about it. That's what they told me. But it's something worth knowing about your vehicle because I very easily could have been in the same spot. The only thing happened to be I was popping my tires off anyway to rotate them and noticed that the rear brakes pads were significantly more eaten up than the front pads. Yeah, so overall, just general vehicle maintenance. Do you have to be meticulous about them? No, I'm not going to be pointing that kind of finger, but you should be aware of what your vehicle needs. You know what I mean? I stay on top of my oil changes and stuff like that. I say that now, but I'm 100 kilometers over. I got to get it done. But even if you do your own oil changes, doesn't mean that you have to have it taken in, professionally done, all that good stuff. Even if you're just doing your maintenance, checking your oil, oh, hey, you know what? It still looks okay. It's still got some viscosity to it. You know about where you're at. That's all you got to do is just know where you are in your vehicle maintenance before you set out. That way you don't get any surprises. Yeah. So that's basically it. Checking it over. So now we've talked about how to find the vehicle. And this goes for ATVs and motorcycles too. Like we're talking more to cars and trucks, but you can tailor this to basically any vehicle. Or at least, hopefully it's safe to say that.
I mean, you can bring this down to bicycles. You can bring it down to, and right up to a full off-roading overland rig. I mean, it's the same system all the way through. Make sure that it's equipped for the type of stuff you're doing. And then make sure once you choose your vehicle that's going to be able to do most of what you want to do. And I always realize, like, there's always a limit. Every vehicle has a limit. I don't care what you buy. You're going to have limits, and realize once you have those limits, you're not going to exceed them. So if you buy like the ultimate off-roading, Jeep Wrangler Unlimited with like 37s on, the most hopped up suspension in the world, you're probably not going to be doing any high speed roads. And like I had a buddy who had one, Sean, and he told me it was driving down the highway was all he could do to keep it on the road.
Yeah, because they have a lot of travel generally.
But once he got off road, like he didn't hesitate for anything. Like he drove at a sensible speed off road because he said you just beat it up if you don't. But he had no worries. Like he was going to crawl over anything. And he could crawl over trees and up steep cliffs. But that was his limitation. His limitation was more the high speed, easy roads. Once you're going off road, it's a totally different beast. Everything has a sweet spot, and you want to try to find the most sweet spots for the area you're going to be in. Then maintenance, you maintain that vehicle. The greatest vehicle in the world is no good if when you get out there, the wheels fall off of it, or same thing with a boat. Even great boats for certain trips. I mean, we've done all these things. So do your maintenance. Make sure that the things that need to be fixed are fixed, and the things that don't, that are checked. And then once you get out there is equipping it. And I think that's the third thing we want to talk about. How do you equip these vehicles?
And I mean, the first part of this was obviously the longer talk. The rest of this could go a little quicker. Like you said, we're going to go over a little bit. We'll try and be reasonable, folks. Okay, so what do you want for your vehicle? And like I was talking to you, Ben, before we came on, I do have a list of what I think most vehicles should have regardless of where they're going. This is the stuff that you go to my wife's car, you're going to find. You go to my truck, you're going to find. You go to my ATV, you're still going to find most of this. This is just basic car, vehicle, whatever you want to call it, kits. And a lot of these people will probably know. Some of them maybe not. So the big ones most people are going to know is like you should have a first aid kit in there. At least a basic one for minor cuts, scrapes, burns, stuff like that. Flashlight's always a good idea. It's no secret that both myself and I think Ben are fans of Olight. We're not sponsored by them in any way, shape, or form. Would love to be. But anyway, they sell a tiny little keychain one that I keep on all the keys of the vehicles. So I got enough of those now that all the vehicles have them. They only need to be charged like once a year, and they work great. Now, for this one might be a little harder to take on motorcycles and ATVs, but believe it or not, I still take a very small set on my ATV, and that's jumper cables. You'd be surprised how often somebody else needs that set of jumper cables, and you're the guy to be rescued. And that one time that you forget your lights on, they're there, you know what I mean? And now we're getting into kind of the... I don't want to say the optional stuff, because this is all still stuff I think should be in the vehicle, but it might be considered some optional depending on your preferences. And that is things like a fire extinguisher. I don't keep a pressurized fire extinguisher in my vehicles. You ever see the little chainsaw fire extinguishers? They're like just powder in a bottle and you squeeze them with your hand and that shoots the powder out. I have saved more vehicles with those little extinguishers than I think most people realize. Like a quick electrical fire or something like that under the hood. You get it up, you give it a quick shot of it, it's out, it's no longer a problem. Yeah, you have a little bit of powder you got to clean up. Compressed air usually gets rid of it. I like to carry an air pump. Like not one for my mattress, though sometimes I've used it for that, but one just to pump up your tire. If it's getting a little low, maybe you got a slow leak around a valve stem or something like that. Or somebody else. How many times have I walked out of work and a coworker's tire's been low and I'm just like, oh yeah, here's the air pump. Pump it up. It's just a good thing to have. I carry a little bit, like a single bottle of water and 2 power bars in my truck at all times. It's under the passenger seat. Pop it up. That's where it's going to be. I tend to get these kind of bottles, the real flexible ones, because when they freeze, they don't pop. And I just leave it there. And in my truck, you'll always find a lighter, knife, and multi-tool. You know what I mean? And Mel's car, you're going to find at least a lighter and a knife. I don't know if her multi-tool's still in there or not. But once again, that's the basics of things you should carry in a vehicle that will get you out of a lot of jams, in all honesty. And here in Canada, depending on weather, I'd put these ones with stars, is like perhaps a blanket and some traction aid. And I'm not talking a fancy traction aid, though if you want to get a fancy one, be my guest, they work great. Even a cheap bag of kitty litter in the winter. You get in an icy spot, you throw it on your tires, and off you go. $6 for one of those massive boxes from like, what am I thinking here? What's the big store where all the bulk stuff is?
Costco?
Thank you, Costco. One of those massive boxes from Costco. I just put a little of those in a bag and throw it under the back of Mel's car where the spare tire goes, and some of it's behind the rear seat in my truck. Easy stuff. Always leave it there. I've used it in mud and stuff like that too. If it's really sloppy mud, you can sometimes stiffen it up enough to get through with bag of kitty litter. To me, basic stuff every vehicle should have. Anything you want to add into that, Ben?
Uh, no. I customize my toolboxes for my vehicles as much as I can. So, you know, you can get pretty fancy with this stuff, but there's a few hints I can give most people. Um, it's good not to take a lot of extra tools, but you definitely want to take the tools. So if you have a metric vehicle, you don't have to take standard tools, and vice versa. So there's one thing. You can go buy your socket kit from the store, and if you want to save yourself some space and weight, get rid of the tools you don't need. You can take them out of the cases. Sometimes those are a little big. Get some organizational rails. Whatever you get, do make sure you can organize it. Try to make a decent compact kit that you can carry around. And then think about things that you have the skill to do. I'm not going to tell someone to go out and buy tools they don't have the skills to use. Myself, I'm an okay electrician. Argumentatively, with some people, I'm a good electrician. Other people would say Ben's a little shady. But the reality is, I do know my way around a multi-tool and a multimeter, and so I have those type of things in there. So tools that I'm familiar with and can use. I also keep a soldering iron in my vehicle, a little gas-powered one, and a few.
A gas-powered soldering iron? Oh, I know the kind you're talking about. I'm thinking like gasoline. You're talking like the little butane-powered one. I'm like,
butane ones.
What are you carrying around? Like, you gotta start this thing up. Okay. Anyway,
No, little butane-powered ones. Also, like a little torch. Some heat shrink, some tape. This, because honestly, especially nowadays, it's more likely electrical fault that's going to drop a lot of big vehicles than it is an actual physical failure. You're just as likely to have a rock come up. My grandfather had an old, it wasn't that old when he had it, actually. It was a Nissan Frontier.
Yep.
Maybe before they were even called Frontier. I think they were called Hustlers or something at one point. And it broke down. And what it turned out to be, and he would have told you the story quite quickly, is what do you call it? The wire to his transmission had a rock get in the harness and cut off his signal to his transmission. So the vehicle read that the transmission wasn't doing something, and it literally shut down. And he's sitting on the side of the road for a while, and he called the garages and stuff because he was trying to travel. He didn't want to. He was a good mechanic. He could fix anything. Anyways, they wanted to replace his transmission. He was like, "This is ridiculous. I'm not changing the transmission for this. There's nothing wrong with my transmission. It was working fine, and then it wasn't. So it was like you'd hear something. So he crawled underneath, and sure enough, started feeling around everything and looking, and he found this loose wire. He pulled the wire down, he cut it, and spliced it back together, taped it up, got in the car, and boom, started right up. No problem again. So if you have this stuff, if you can splice a wire back together, you can oftentimes fix something. A little bit of sandtape paper will fix a ground. A lot of times your failures is a ground. So when you have electrical problems, more often than not, it's not the component, but the wiring to the component that is the problem. Not every time. Spare fuses. Make sure you have spare fuses. Patches for your tires. I always have a tire patch kit. If the vehicle can take it, I'll have tubes. So in my motorcycle, there's tubes. It's a tubeless tire, but if I get a hole, I will put a tube in it every time. In fact, there's probably tubes in my bike right now. But I also have patch kits, so if I have to, I can take the tube out and patch it, or I can take the tire and patch the tube and the tire. It really doesn't hurt anything to protect as much as you can. I have plugs. I'll stick a plug in. Whatever gets you out of the woods, and then you deal with the problem when you get out there. The reality is, if you're off-roading and you call the tow truck and he's got to come in, if he has to leave the pavement to come find you, he's probably going to charge you a lot more.
A
So,
lot of money. Second they gotta come
so
off the pavement.
spare tire. Have a decent spare tire. If you're off roading, where possible, have a full size spare. Those
I
little
was gonna say,
donuts are
have a
not
full
going to.
size spare in an off roading situation because a donut tire probably isn't gonna get you to the woods.
Interestingly enough, like the one of the vehicle I talked about today was this the Bison version of the Colorado. I'm really interested in it. The spare tire sits in the bed, which means
Hmm.
you've lost a percentage of the bed because it won't fit underneath.
I
There's
seen
not
that in
enough.
some of the Raptor variants too. Is that why they
Yeah,
do it? Is because you lose the space underneath?
you do not have enough room for a full size spare if you have an oversized tire stuck underneath. Like that, it just won't fit. So these bigger, wider tires are great off road, but now you have to figure out how you're going to carry it around. So if it's sitting in your bed, you have a 4 foot or 6 foot bed or 5 foot bed, whatever happens to be on these vehicles, and some of them are that size. And a big tire, you've lost 25% of your bed space just to a tire.
Well, that's the bane of my existence on my Ranger. I have a 5.5 foot box.
Yeah.
It's not a long one because I had to get the crew cab because we had Lily and we wanted a vehicle that could take all of us.
Yeah.
And I carry a toolbox on back of that. Just a small toolbox. Carries my stuff in it. Takes up literally about a foot and a half of that 5.5 feet I have. So now I have like a 4 foot box. You know what I mean? You can't put a lot of stuff in a 4 foot box.
No. So there are things you can get, and this is what how you make. I guess this is another thing. How do I make a vehicle more usable than it is stock? And there are things you can get, and you really have to think about these things. I have roof racks. You can stick things on the roof. It's going to add drag to you, so it's going to make you look a bit hickish. I don't care. You can get the trailer hitch baskets.
Yeah, I've been thinking about getting one of those for a little extra space on the back of my truck. Goes in the
Yeah.
Reese hitch, gives you another basket where I could put maybe an additional fuel can or some totes or something.
You can put 500 pounds in these things, but
Yeah,
you
they
can.
hold quite a bit. I've seen them.
You,
People have motorcycles on them.
yeah. So I've got one. I've stuck, a good sized cooler, a propane tank, a Rubbermaid style container, or these big Plano containers I have, full of gear that I don't mind bouncing around a little bit. It is a rougher thing. If you have a lower vehicle, and that coming straight, that's really going to affect your clearance.
Yeah, your breakover angle, it's going to hit in the back.
So you can get a hitch that raises this 4 to 6 inches. So it goes in your 2 inch hitch and then immediately goes up, comes out. Those 4 or 5 inches make a huge difference in, say, my minivan, which is very low anyways. And I have had my receiver hit on speed bumps, which means going off road with that thing and it sticking out another 2.5 to 3 feet is a no for me. But with this rise, I will now be able to take it to places I won't. Even in my SUV, which sits much higher, and I've never had the hitch hit anything, that raise will really give me some comfort. So there's that. If you can also get hitch mounted things that'll hold your spare tire and spare fuel. That opens up a ton of room in your trunk or your box. Putting a
Especially if you
cat.
have one of those box mounted rear tires to begin with, like with the Bison or the Raptor.
Yeah. So if you have a truck, putting a cap on it makes the space a lot more usable
I
than a tonneau
loved
cover.
my truck cap when I had it, man. I regret getting rid of it. Man, I loved having a cap.
I've said I don't know if I'd ever own one without. Now I've seen a couple of neat versions out there now that you can get these all metal ones that
Mhm.
show up flat packed, and you can replace sections if you get damaged, or you can even replace sections with upgrades. So there's storage spots in it, or they bulge out a little bit and they have like a little container in it, or there's molly step on it, so you can strap, say, your traction boards and other tools external to your truck. A guy in this building, he has a small propane tank mounted out there. That means it's not inside the truck, so it's saving him that room.
Mm.
So that ability to mount stuff to the side of your truck or to the top of your truck or your SUV, if you look at any good sized SUV, you'll see they have larger roof racks on a lot of these things. This makes that space so much more usable for the things in there. But when you're doing that, make sure that the stuff you need is accessible.
Nothing worse than putting it in a place you can't reach, especially when you need it. It's like
Well,
putting the bug spray at the bottom of your backpack.
picture this. This is a really good one. Spare tire for most SUVs that are stored internally is stored inside under the floor. But if you're traveling and you're fully loaded, that means you now have probably a cooler, 2 or 3 containers, all your luggage, your backpacks, your tent, uh, chairs, whatever, sitting on top of that. If you get a flat tire, you need to get your spare out. Everything has to come out of the truck. It has to go sit somewhere, probably in the ditch, so the people coming up and down the road aren't hitting it. Then you have to get the tire and the jack out and jack it up. Now, in the same case, that spare tire comes out, your full size isn't fitting in there.
Mm. So now you
Right?
have to deal with the full size tire.
So now when you go to leave, like how are you getting so knowing how to deal with this stuff and put it, that's why you see a lot of the guys who are doing off-roading and have full-size tires, they take the little dummy out and they strap that somewhere out so that they can replace them really quickly. And then you keep your toolkit, wrapped up in somewhere more accessible. You don't have to pull everything out. It's a lot easier. So I've watched the guys. I was in the woods with a guy a little while ago, and this was the setup we were in. And he literally changed the tire in like 15 minutes. Like we pulled off, he burned it off on the dirt road. We got out. He's like, okay, I got to do this. So he jumped out and he quickly just pulled the spare tire to the back, threw the jack up there, stuck it on. We were still airing up when he got there, right?
So speaking of airing up, I guess where are we at? We're at 40 minutes. We're still not terrible, where I thought we'd go with this. Let's talk about some of the niceties, because we already went down that road anyway, and that's kind of the end of where this system is. So we were talking about some nice things there. If you can afford it, some of these are nice. And I think you would agree, Ben, like some sort of skid plate or rock slider system, just to keep your undersides protected. Now, you can go as intricate or as little as you want. The ones I would suggest looking after is going to be your front rear end, or your front pumpkin, whatever you want to call it, your oil pan, and your gas tank. Those are the 3 big ones I generally try to look after. And if you can, your rear end, like your actual rear axle rear end, that's a nice one to have a little skid plate on too, just to absorb some shock, because those are the things that are, well, your rear ends are the lowest points on your vehicle, generally. Your oil pan, if you lose your oil, you're not going anywhere, and it's kind of the same as your gas tank. So those are the big 4, though I have seen armor that literally completely covers the underside of your vehicle. It's like checker plate armor. Adds a hell of a lot of weight, though.
Yeah. Yeah, armor's off is something I've thought a lot about. It's interesting, too. Like, if you talk to guys, there's a real hate on for plastic. It's, you got to have steel. You got to have aluminum. Aluminum's lighter. Someone else pointed out that plastic slides way nicer than steel.
And it's cheaper to replace. If it saved your vehicle once and you replace it, even if you do it 3 or 4 times, it's probably still cheaper than buying the steel stuff.
Although personally, I don't know if anyone makes this, but here's a $1 million idea. If you could get a steel one with nylon coating,
Nomar, like a Nomar layer underneath that self-lubricating plastic, man, that stuff would be great. Also, while we're talking about this, I mentioned rock sliders, which is kind of goes down the side, but even a set of running boards, like for my truck, since I put the side steps on so the girls could get in and out of the truck a little easier, because Lily only being 10, or not even 10, she's 9, a little hard for her to get up in there, and Melissa only being like 5'6", a little hard for her to get up in there too. So anyway, since I put those on, I get so fewer scratches down the side, because just those things keep like all the little briars and brambles and things away from my doors. And I mean, they weren't that expensive to put on either.
no. No, it really does help. Just realize that rock sliders are really good at sliding at rocks, and your side steps aren't.
Yeah. Know their limitations. I'm just saying there's levels you can go to. Don't think you have to go drop $7,000 on rock armor. If you're just farting around on like back roads, sometimes the side step is going to keep at least the branches away from scratching you up.
I've seen one product I'm really interested in. I've seen a lot of ads for it. I can't remember the name of it, but it's essentially a clear coat paint that peels right off. But you go on and you just paint it on. You don't care if it looks good or bad or indifferent. It just coats it. And then if you're going through the woods and stuff, it absorbs all these impacts like of branches and stuff. And then when you get out, you can just literally peel it right off the side of your vehicle. So it probably sticks pretty good. Maybe you have to, I don't know if you heat it or do something with it. But if you're only doing it like 2 or 3 weekends a year and you want to preserve your nice new looking vehicle, it is a way to sort of protect it and then still have that good looking vehicle.
I'm so bad for. I buy a truck, I treat it like a truck.
Me too.
But I'd be curious on that. You know what I mean? That would be an interesting little system. Are you planning to try it out, or do you know somebody that has it?
Man, my car's so scratched up. What's the point now?
Well, that's where my truck is. You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to save anything now.
I'm trying to hide the scratches now. But no, if I had a brand new vehicle, like that's the ticker for me. Like, you go out and you spend, say, because the trucks aren't cheap these days. SUVs aren't cheap. Like, nothing's cheap. A good new vehicle right now, you're looking at probably 60 plus thousand. Easily spend 100,000 on a brand new base lawn. Like without buying any options, we're buying like the top of the line. So if you want to go out and buy, say, the top of the line Tacoma without options, but just like what's the name on it right now?
The off-road ORT or whatever.
No, there's one above that. But
any case,
Pathfinder, no.
You got me, man. I can't afford a Toyota, so it's not something I know. I guess while Ben's looking that up, the last thing I had on the niceties, if money was no option, something that I really enjoy is... sorry, what was it?
I think they're trail hunters.
Maybe so. Like I said, I'm not sure. Anyway, what I was going to talk about was tire pressure monitoring kit. A lot of vehicles got these built in, but if you don't have one, it's nice just to keep, like, you can buy the remote kits. You put them in your tires, and they'll come with a little screen, and it'll show you which tires you're doing. It's nice to know when a tire's going flat so you can catch it before it becomes a major problem. Once again, just a nicety. Anyway, Ben, did you figure her out, bud?
I think it's trail hunter. So you can buy, but every vehicle, it's the Bison, and so you go out, if you want to buy the top of the line, say mid-size truck or mid-size SUV that's designed for off-roading, they all have their own brand or trim level. You spend $100,000 on it. You probably don't want to put scratch on the paint right away. So it's worth spending $100 on this coating, the spray on or paint on, and then come out. I've also seen magnetic armor. I like that idea too.
Oh, that'd be interesting. I've seen the plastic wrap. It's not really a wrap. It's like that clear stuff you put on that's supposed to take all the rock chips and stuff out of it. I see it on real high-end cars, and I imagine it must be really expensive. But that was another idea that I was interested in if I ever had a vehicle that would be good enough for it.
So there's options out there. You definitely want to protect your vehicle, right? But stuff like that is important because it is a lot of money. But yeah, the flip side, and this is where I'm sort of sitting too, is you could buy something 5-6 years old that somebody's already off-road and put a few scratches on and probably save yourself $30,000-$40,000.
No, 100%. That's the thing. If you are buying it, especially for a second vehicle, go used. Save some money.
So, I don't know what my end result will be. I'm not going to turn around and say do this or do that because I would do this or do that. It's really worth thinking about, though. Think about what you want, what you need. And, maybe a brand new vehicle isn't the solution for you. Or maybe you definitely want that, exactly what you want. You're spending a lot of money. What's another $20,000 if you're going to get exactly what you want and probably get a couple more years out of it?
But that's being realistic. Once again, maybe that is the better option. Right back to what, man, that white section of my beard is really starting to come down quite low now. Keep noticing it in the light. Anyway, I digress. We're at 50 minutes here, Ben. I think that's probably a good place tied up here for tonight. We've talked about a lot of stuff. I think the important part was getting your vehicle ready, what to look for, how to get it prepped, what to look for before you go out there. Then we talked about some of the stuff that you can include in your vehicle kits. Once again, just get the juices flowing. There is no perfect kit for any one thing. There's some basic items everybody should have, but ideally you're going to tailor that kit to how you use your vehicle, the area you live in, the people that are in the vehicle with you, and just your personal preferences. Is that safe to say, Ben?
Yeah, sure.
All right, folks. Well, that's a good place to enter here for tonight. So thanks for joining us. We had Steve and Eric joining us there. There was a third person that popped in at one point. I seen the stat come up, but I don't know who it was. A couple other people came in and out through the day, or through the show. Not sure who you are, but thanks for joining us when you were here. We're here, and we'll talk to everybody again next week. Night, everybody.
Night all.